us about your uncle, William Berger. You often call
Yes.
him Uncle Billy.
Uncle
Uh,
Billy. Yes.
yeah. What kind of person was he?
Yeah. So Uncle Billy he was my godfather. So I was raised Catholic, and in Catholicism, you get godparents when you're baptized into the religion. And as such, Uncle Billy, who is my mom's oldest brother, was always very, very close to me, and his wife, my Aunt Trixie, or Beatrix. And so Uncle Billy, for as long as I knew him, was in the Marines, and that was such a big part of his identity in terms of not just his day-to-day work, but in terms of how he engaged with me as a kid, and his behaviors and what he valued, and just such a big part of his life, which just then as a result became such a big part of my life, and understanding the importance of the Marines, the U.S. Marines, and being an active part of the U.S. military service.
Now, he made an impression on you,
A
apparently.
huge impression, a huge impression. So as a Marine, he moved around quite a bit, lived in many states, lived internationally. And, I would say, one of the most special times in my life was when I was in college in Baltimore. I went to Johns Hopkins, which is in Baltimore. My uncle was working in the Pentagon, and so that's in DC. So there's only about a short 1 hour trip between Washington, DC and Baltimore. And so I got to see my Uncle Billy, more often than I saw my parents. And so I was always very close to him, but especially during those 4 years I was in college, he became my surrogate parent during that time, because, we were so close to seeing him for weekend trips and holidays, and, just being part of his immediate family even more so, and his daughters becoming like my sisters, and they still are today, was just so special, feeling like I had, not just one mom and dad, but two that really just embraced me and made me their own.
Yeah, you're very fortunate in that way. Yeah, that's awesome.
Very much so, yes.
A lot of folks from that era are often reluctant to talk about their military experiences. Did he share stories of his service with you and what it meant to
Yes.
him to
I would
serve?
say lots, because one thing I learned about my uncle and part of his path of being in the military service. So he went into the Marines right out of college. So he was, a long-term member of the U.S. Marine Corps. And he was so passionate about writing letters. And now, we're in 2023. People hardly write letters anymore. We're so used to tweeting and texting and email and electronic methods of communication. But my Uncle Billy was such a passionate letter writer. And so, one of the fondest memories I have, and I still have his letters with me, is that he would write me letters from all over the world that would, tell me where he is. He was in Japan for a long time. He was in the Philippines. He was in South America. I mean, these different parts of the world where he was stationed, and what it looked like there, and what he ate there, and just checking in on me and saying, hey, he always called me Chris. Was my family nickname growing up. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? How's school? What are you learning about? Like, that was just such a special part of our relationship. When I didn't see him in person because he was traveling, this really rich culture that was part of him being in the Marines, of writing letters that just become mementos for the rest of your life, was so special.
You had a little window on the world, didn't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And your uncle earned many accolades, honors during his military service with the Marine Corps. Can you tell us about those?
Many, too many to list, I would say. Just big picture, he was a very dedicated member of the U.S. Marines, and decorated in several ways, and really ascended the ranks to colonel in the U.S. Marines. And like I said, worked in the Pentagon, and was so passionate and committed to being of service. And his service was to his country, it was to the people around him. And that when his time in the U.S. Marine Corps ended, his service continued in the fact that I think one of the things he gained in being in the U.S. Marine Corps was a love of teaching, because there's a structure in the Marines where you're teaching the people below you, like, here's what it means to be a Marine, and the structure that being in the armed services brings to brings to your life. And I'm so proud of my uncle because, when his military career ended, he still, after giving, decades of his life to service, he still wanted to be of service. So he went back to school, he became a teacher. And not only did he become a teacher, he became a special ed teacher. And so he's not only a decorated Marine, but he also became a highly decorated teacher for kids with special needs. And I think that just really shows his character, and that he was just somebody who was always, always, always giving of himself to other people.
Yeah, I had made a note that, he's 26 years with the U.S. Marine Corps, and then a whole nother career, as you said, in education.
A whole nother career in education after that, yes.
Yeah, and it was there in the Arlington, Arlington, Washington, D.C. area. Is that right?
Initially in the Arlington, Washington, D.C. area, and then my Uncle Billy and my Aunt Trixie, his wife, and their two daughters moved to Maine, and he continued his teaching career in Maine until he became sick and unable to teach anymore. And so he's influenced the lives of children in two different states, which I think is just really so amazing.
Touched a lot of lives in his lifetime. That's
definitely, yes, many.
So we lost your uncle in 2022. Are you comfortable sharing more about his passing and what led up?
Absolutely. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I get emotional about it. So my uncle was stationed at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina, which many people may have heard of. And it's, you see commercials on TV about Camp Lejeune, and many servicemen and women were who were stationed at Camp Lejeune had a particular exposure there that you can read about on the internet. And my uncle was stationed there at the time where this exposure happened. It was a chemical exposure, and he had a neurodegenerative disease as a result of this exposure, and ultimately had a dementia that took his life, and spent the last several years of his life at a VA facility because he was just unable to care for himself as a result of this progressive dementia and decline in his physical and mental status. So that ultimately is what took his life in 2022.
But certainly up to that point had a very rich and fruitful life. What would you say is your uncle's legacy?
His family, hands down, he would say that. I would say there was a lot of things he loved. He loved the New York Yankees. And as a kid, he would, travel with my mom they grew up, and so did I, outside of New York City. And my mom and my Uncle Billy, and they're only a year apart, would go and see the New York Yankees. So he's a huge New York Yankees fan. He loves oatmeal cookies with raisins. So those are, some of the things he loves, and he loves the Beatles. So those are some of the three things that he loves. But I think his legacy, hands down, his legacy, he would say, is his family, his wife and his two daughters especially, and then his extended family. So they're, my Uncle Billy and my mom are one of 6 children, and they have extended family, nieces and nephews and cousins. And he was such a family man, and just so devoted to his immediate family, and then nurturing the families of everyone around him as well, which I think really bore out not just in his work in the Marines, but then also in his work as being a special ed teacher as well.
Yeah, wonderful role model to everyone, sounds like.
Absolutely. And we're putting this in the context of a lung cancer foundation, and I think my uncle would say, if he were here today, he would say, Chris, and again, that's what my family refers to me as Chris, he would say, you have to do everything that you can, because lung cancer is so common in veterans for many, many reasons. And I know that it would be his strong desire to say, just do whatever you can to help anyone who's a U.S. veteran who's suffering from lung cancer, who has exposures, who's been in the field, who needs help because they have lung cancer. This is a huge problem, as everyone who is listening to this understands, that there's a lot of lung cancer in our veteran populations, and this is an important problem that we think about and try to collectively tackle together as a community.
Did your uncle's military service or his diagnosis influence your career path to become a lung cancer researcher?
I would say not directly, but it influences it now very much so. So during my training as a medical resident and then as a fellow, so a fellow is when you're finished residency, you're a physician and you're learning your subspecialty training. In my case, oncology. I was fortunate that the university that I work at, Vanderbilt, has a VA attached to it. And so I was able to work at the VA all through residency and then through fellowship training. And then, now really try to engage the VA in other ways through grant programs, through review, even though I don't technically have a VA affiliation for several reasons. The VA is a place where actually a lot of people want to work because they love the veteran population. There are other ways that you can engage the VA system and try to help our veterans. And certainly now and in the future, I would love to continue to grow that part of my career.
Dr. Ludwig, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.